It all started on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where nothing really seems out of the ordinary until something unforgettable happens. I was sitting in the kitchen, sipping my coffee, while my son, Ethan, was in the living room playing with our dog, Max. Now, Max isn't just any dog. He's been with us for 5 years, a golden retriever with a heart of gold and the loyalty of a soldier. He's protective, playful, and deeply attached to our family, especially Ethan. They've been best friends since the day we brought Max home. But that morning, Ethan decided to try something new, our broken bar, something he had seen in a video online. And what followed? Well, a broken bar. None of us were ready for it. Ethan had been watching these harmless little challenge videos that people post all over social media, fun experiments with their pets to test reactions. Nothing dangerous or risky, just silly things like pretending to faint or hiding behind a door to see how the pet responds. So when Ethan called Max over with that mischievous glint in his eye, I didn't think much of it. He told me he wanted to try the invisible wall prank, where you stretch a clear plastic wrap across a doorway and wait to see if your pet walks into it or figures it out. It sounded innocent enough, and I'll admit, I was curious too. We both expected Max to either stop and sniff it or just walk through without even noticing. What we didn't expect a broken bar was how Max would react emotionally. Ethan carefully set up the prank in the hallway while Max was busy sniffing around in the living room. I was filming from the side, trying to hold in my laughter. When everything was ready, Ethan called out to Max like he always does. "Come here, boy," he said, with a big smile on his face. But Max didn't move at first. Instead, he just stared at Ethan, ears perked up, eyes sharp, almost as if he sensed something was off. That's when things started to feel a broken bar different. It wasn't just a silly prank anymore. Max didn't run into the plastic wrap. He didn't even bark or jump around like usual. What he did instead completely froze me and Ethan in our tracks. There was something in Max's eyes, something deep, almost human. He let out a soft whine and slowly backed away. Then, he did something none of us saw coming. A broken bar. He ran upstairs and went straight into Ethan's room, something he never does unless he's scared or upset. Ethan looked at me, confused, and honestly, a little shaken. We followed Max up the stairs, calling his name, trying to reassure him. But what we found in Ethan's room, a broken bar, left us both stunned. And that's where everything changed. What we discovered that day made us see Max in a completely new light. It wasn't just a funny dog prank anymore. It turned into something much deeper, something emotional, something that revealed a side of our dog we had never seen before. But before I tell you what was waiting for us in that room, a broken bar, you need to know what happened just before Ethan called Max, because that may be the real reason behind Max's reaction. And it might just change how you see your pets forever. Just before Ethan called Max that morning, something unusual had happened. It is something so small that, at the time, it didn't seem important. About half an hour earlier, Ethan had found an old toy buried in the back of his closet. It was a stuffed dog, worn out, missing one ear, and covered in dust. He used to carry it everywhere as a toddler. When he held it up to show me, I smiled and said, "Wow, I forgot all about that thing." Ethan chuckled and tossed it onto his bed, not thinking much of it. But here's the strange part. Max, who had been lying calmly by the window, suddenly stood up, tail low, and stared at the toy. He didn't bark or growl. He just stared. We brushed it off. Maybe it reminded him of something, or maybe he was just curious. But now, looking back, it feels like that moment was connected to everything that followed. That same toy was still sitting on Ethan's bed when Max ran up there after the prank. And when we followed Max up the stairs, he wasn't just hiding her. He was curled up next to that toy, gently nudging it with his nose, like he was comforting it, our broken bar, or maybe being comforted by it. It was the most still and serious I've ever seen him. Ethan kept asking, "Why is he acting like this? Did I scare him?" But even I didn't have an answer. I tried calling Max over, but he wouldn't budge. He just stayed there, eyes fixed on the stuffed dog, tail not wagging, just still. It was like something about that toy triggered a memory or a feeling in him. And then another strange thing happened. Max began to softly whine, but not in a scared or hurt way. It sounded more like a broken bar sadness. That's when Ethan remembered something else. A few years ago, before we got Max, there was another dog, our first dog, Buddy. He was only with us for a short while before he passed away due to illness. Ethan was really young then, barely 4. That old stuffed toy had been his comfort during that time, and now it was back. Somehow, Max, who never even met Buddy, was responding to it. But how could he know? Was it the scent, a strange connection, or was it something else? There was something going on that we couldn't explain. Something that made Max, the most playful dog we knew, go quiet. Something that seemed to reach beyond a simple prank or a forgotten toy. And we were just beginning to uncover it. Later that evening, after things had calmed down a bit, I noticed Max still hadn't gone back downstairs. It was like he'd claimed Ethan's room as his own now, staying close to that old stuffed toy as if he was guarding it. Ethan tried to play with him, offering his favorite ball and even some treats, but Max wasn't interested. It was clear something had shifted. His eyes, usually full of energy and excitement, looked distant, thoughtful, if that's even possible for a dog. I couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was going on. It wasn't just about the prank. There was something else, something buried. That night, while Ethan was asleep, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out an old photo album from the closet. Flipping through the pages brought back memories of Buddy, Ethan's first dog. There were only a handful of photos, mostly blurry, but one of them caught my eye. It was a picture of Buddy lying next to that same stuffed toy, in the exact same spot where Max had curled up earlier. I stared at that photo for a long time, a strange chill creeping up my spine. Was it possible that Max sensed something left behind? Some kind of memory, scent, or feeling? Dogs have strong instincts, sure, but this felt like more than just instinct. The next day, Ethan's behavior started to change too. He was quieter, more thoughtful. He kept looking at Max like he was trying to understand something no one had explained. That's when he told me he'd been having strange dreams lately, dreams where he hears a dog barking. But when he turns around, it's not Max. He said the dog in the dream feels familiar, but he can never see its face. Just the sound, just the feeling. And suddenly, everything felt connected. That same night, something happened that none of us could explain. It was around 2 a.m. when I woke up to the sound of scratching. Not loud, just steady, like paws gently brushing against wood. I got out of bed, still half asleep, thinking maybe Max needed to go outside. But when I stepped into the hallway, the scratching stopped. The house was quiet, dark, still. I walked toward Ethan's room, where Max had been sleeping lately. The door was slightly open, and as I peeked in, I saw Max sitting upright at the edge of Ethan's bed, staring at the window. The toy was lying beside him again, and his body was completely still. No tail wagging, no movement, just that intense focus. I called his name softly, but he didn't even turn to look at me. That's when Ethan stirred. He sat up slowly and said, "He's here again." My heart skipped a beat. I asked him what he meant. He pointed to the window and whispered, "The dog in my dream. He's outside." I walked over to the window and looked out. There was nothing there, just the faint outline of trees and shadows under the streetlight. But Max stayed locked on that spot, as if something only he could sense was out there. Ethan whispered again, "He keeps calling Max a broken bar. I think it's Buddy." I felt a chill run through me. How could a dream and a dog's behavior be so in sync? That's when Max started to growl, low, soft, and steady. Not angry, but alert, like he was waiting for something, or someone. And then, just as suddenly, he leapt off the bed and ran downstairs, barking for the first time in days. Ethan and I looked at each other and ran after him. Something was happening. We raced down the stairs, our hearts pounding, trying to keep up with Max as he barked and bolted toward the back door. He stopped suddenly, paws pressed to the glass, tail stiff, growl still rumbling deep in his chest. I flipped on the porch light, expecting to see a raccoon or maybe a stray cat. But the yard was empty, completely still, not even a breeze. Yet Max wouldn't stop barking, his eyes locked on the far corner of the yard near the old tree swing, the one Ethan used to play on when he was little. Ethan clung to my arm, whispering, He's here again, a broken bar. I can feel it. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to tell him it was just his imagination, that he was dreaming too much, but deep down, something didn't feel right. Just as I reached for the back door to calm Max, the porch light flickered once, twice here and then went out. Total darkness. Then, we heard it. A bark. But it wasn't Max. This bark was distant but distinct. Low, hoarse, and coming from that same corner of the yard. Ethan gasped and took a step back. "That's the dog in my dreams," he said quietly. Max fell completely silent now, ears straight up, body frozen. It was like he was listening, awaiting. And then, without warning, he pushed the door open with his paw and ran into the darkness. We both screamed his name and ran after him. The grass was wet from the evening dew, and the cold air hit us like a wave. We reached the tree swing and stopped in our tracks. Max was standing there, silent again, tail down, nose pointed at the ground. I shined my phone's flashlight and saw something I hadn't seen in years. An old, weather-worn collar, half buried in the dirt. It wasn't Max's, it was Buddy's. I recognized the faded name tag instantly. Ethan slowly picked it up, his hands shaking. "How did this get here?" he asked, barely above a whisper. I didn't have an answer. That collar had been buried with Buddy. I remember because I placed it in the box myself. But now, here it was, above ground. And that's when Max turned around and started walking straight toward the woods at the edge of our yard. And without a word, Ethan followed him. I ran after Ethan, calling his name, but he didn't stop. Max stayed just a few steps ahead, leading him deeper into the woods behind our yard. The trees felt taller than ever, shadows stretching across the narrow path. As my phone's flashlight bounced with every step, I was scared not just of where we were going, but of what we might find. There was something about Max's calmness that kept me moving. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't lost. He was guiding us. After what felt like forever, Max stopped in a small clearing. The air was still, silent. Ethan stood beside him, clutching Buddy's collar. I stepped into the clearing just as Max sat down beside an old tree stump. His eyes were fixed on something half buried beneath the roots. I knelt down and brushed the dirt away with my hands, and there it was. A box. Old, wooden, and familiar. It was the box we had buried Buddy in. But here's the twist. The box wasn't broken, it hadn't been dug up by animals, and there were no signs of damage. It looked carefully placed, like someone had moved it intentionally. My breath caught. I opened it slowly, expecting to find only the memory of a lost pet. But inside, wrapped in a small cloth, was a photo, one I had never seen before. It was of Buddy, sitting beside a younger Max, a broken bar, and Ethan's toy dog. But here's the part that gave me chills. Ethan was maybe 3 years old in the photo, but Max, a broken bar Max, was in it too. Not our Max, a different one. Identical, but older. Same breed, same eyes. Ethan stared at it. "That's him," he said. "That's the dog from my dreams." I had no words. It made no sense. But in that moment, I felt something shift, something let go. Max barked once, softly, and nudged the box closed with his nose. The air felt lighter. The woods, less heavy. As we walked back, the silence didn't feel scary anymore. It felt peaceful. We never figured out how that photo got there, or how Buddy's collar ended up in our yard. But since that night, Ethan hasn't had those dreams. And Max? He's been his old self again, a playful, loving, and always close by. But every now and then, he still sits by the window at night, watching, waiting. Life slowly returned to normal after that night in the woods. The next morning, Ethan woke up without any strange dreams. For the first time in weeks, he was rested, smiling, almost like the weight he had been carrying without even knowing it had finally lifted. Max was back to chasing birds in the yard and greeting us with his goofy tail wags. But something about him had changed too. He was calmer now, more in tune with Ethan than ever before. They were always close, but now it was like an invisible thread tied them even tighter. I took the old photo and kept it in a small frame on my desk. It's become a quiet reminder that some connections go deeper than we understand. I've looked at it 100 times, trying to make sense of how Maxa or a dog who looked exactly like him could appear in a picture taken before he ever came into our lives. But maybe that's the point. Not everything is meant to be understood. Some moments are just meant to be felt. As for the stuffed toy, it stayed in Ethan's room. Max would still nuzzle it sometimes, especially at night, but he never acted strangely again. It had become a comfort to both of them now, not a mystery. The old collar, faded and worn, now hangs by the back door. We never moved it. It belongs there as part of the story we lived, and the bond we'll never forget. Ethan and I talked a lot after everything happened, about Buddy, about memories, about how animals might hold on to things the way we do. And he said something that stuck with me. Maybe Max came into our lives because Buddy knew we still needed a friend. And maybe he's right. Maybe the love we give our pets doesn't just disappear, it finds a way to come back. Now, whenever someone visits and asks why our dog stares out the window every night, we just smile and say, he's keeping an eye on things. Because some stories don't need a big ending, they just need to be remembered. And Max, he'll always be a part of both our past and our present, even when he's just sitting quietly, watching the night.